Hello and welcome to the Tranquil Mind. Today, I want to start with a question that might make you pause and think for a moment. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that your love, something that should bring you joy, began to feel heavy? Have you ever loved to the point where your love, instead of freeing you both, seemed to become a burden? Maybe it was a partner, a family member, or even a close friend. At first, everything felt beautiful. The connection was deep, real, and life felt fuller, brighter. But then, somewhere along the way, something shifted. The love became mixed with fear of losing them, fear of things changing, fear of not being enough or needing too much. It's a common experience, and yet, it's one that feels isolating. When we're in that kind of love, we can feel tangled up, and even though we care deeply, our love starts to hurt. It's like holding on to something precious so tightly that, instead of protecting it, we crush it. And that's when love can morph into attachment, which brings with it a kind of pain that isn't love at all. Today, we're going to explore this profound idea. How do we love without attachment? This isn't just an idealistic concept. It's a powerful practice rooted deeply in Buddhist teachings that can change how we approach every relationship in our lives. You don't have to be a Buddhist or even particularly spiritual to understand and feel the impact of this teaching. At its core, there's a way to cultivate a love that feels free, a love that nurtures rather than restricts, and a love that, instead of causing pain, brings peace. But I get it. Saying love without attachment might sound a bit abstract. You might even be wondering, is it really possible to love without holding on tightly? Or if I don't hold on, won't I lose them? These are real questions, and they touch on fears and beliefs we've been carrying, maybe even for most of our lives. Many of us believe that loving someone means holding on, keeping close, or even needing to control certain things to make sure they stay. But as we'll discover today, true love, the kind that brings us closer to peace, isn't about clinging or possessing. It's about something far deeper. Let me share a story that might resonate with you. Imagine a young man named Sam who falls in love. At first, it's magical. He can't believe his good fortune, and his days feel brighter, his life fuller. But as time goes on, Sam starts to worry. What if she meets someone better? Or what if she decides she doesn't want to be with me? So he begins to hold on a little tighter. He asks her not to spend as much time with her friends, wants to know where she's going, and subtly, he starts placing his happiness in her hands. First, she might oblige, but eventually, the weight of his need to hold her close starts to feel stifling. The love, which began so freely, now feels like something they both have to carry, and it starts to hurt. This isn't an unusual story, is it? And if we're honest, most of us have probably been Sam or have been on the receiving end of a love that started to cling. This is what happens when attachment disguises itself as love. It's not that Sam didn't love. It's just that his love got mixed up with fear and the need to control. His happiness was dependent on her actions. And when that happens, love becomes less about giving and more about taking. Buddhism has a unique approach to this challenge, one that offers us a way out of this cycle of attachment and pain. Buddhist teachings talk about three core principles that guide us in loving without attachment: impermanence, anicca; suffering, dukkha; and non self anatta. Each of these ideas has the potential to bring us closer to a love that liberates rather than binds. Now, don't worry. This isn't about detaching or becoming emotionless. In fact, it's quite the opposite. When we learn to love without attachment, our love actually becomes deeper because it's no longer limited by fear or selfish needs. When we're not afraid of losing someone or needing them to fulfill our every desire, we allow ourselves to truly see them, to appreciate them, and to love them in a way that feels expansive and pure. Over the next few minutes, I'll guide you through these Buddhist concepts in a way that's both practical and deeply transformative. We'll look at why attachment causes us pain and how recognizing the impermanence of everything in life can actually bring us closer to peace. We'll see how understanding that everyone is carrying their own suffering helps us become more compassionate. and how embracing the truth of non-self can actually deepen our relationships. And for those of you who might feel skeptical, thinking that loving without attachment sounds a bit too detached, I invite you to stay with me. This isn't about becoming indifferent or aloof. It's about cultivating a love that's rooted in kindness and freedom. Imagine being able to love someone fully without constantly fearing loss or disappointment. Imagine a love that celebrates the other person's journey, no matter where it takes them. This kind of love doesn't bind or suffocate. It allows both people to grow and evolve, whether side by side or on different paths. So if you've ever felt the weight of attachment in your relationships, or if you're simply curious about how to bring more peace and joy into the way you love, stay with me. By the end of this journey, you might just find yourself with a new perspective on love, one that doesn't ask, "How can I keep this person close?" but rather, "How can I love them fully, for who they are, without needing them to complete me?" Thank you for joining me here on the Tranquil Mind. Together, let's uncover the path to loving without attachment, to a love that's as freeing as it is profound. Grab a comfortable spot, take a deep breath, and let's explore this journey of the heart. As we dive into the heart of this exploration, let's take a closer look at one of the core differences between love and attachment, a distinction that, when understood, can transform how we relate to one another. Imagine that love is a gentle breeze that flows between two people, refreshing and nourishing each soul. Attachment, on the other hand, is like a heavy chain, pulls us down, creates strain, and can turn the joy of connection into the weight of expectation and control. At its essence, love is a pure and selfless energy. When we genuinely love someone, our focus shifts from ourselves to the happiness and well-being of the other person. It's like watching a beautiful flower in bloom. We don't want to pluck it or own it. We just appreciate its beauty, giving it space to grow freely. Attachment, however, is more about what we want for ourselves. It's the feeling that we need this person to fulfill something within us. In attachment, we want the flower to bloom only for us, and often we end up holding on so tightly that we risk damaging it. In modern life, with all its pressures and complexities, it's easy to see why we often fall into attachment without realizing it. Society encourages us to seek security and stability in relationships, to find our other half who will make us feel complete. Movies, music, and even social media often glamorize a kind of all-consuming love, one where the couple can't bear to be apart and where jealousy is somehow proof of passion. As a result, we come to believe that real love means never letting go, that it's okay, even expected, to cling tightly to those we love. Take the story of Mia and Jack, a young couple who met in college. When they first met, it was a true connection, one based on mutual respect and admiration. They enjoyed each other's company, laughed at each other's jokes, and spent long nights talking about their dreams and fears. It was a love that felt freeing, one where both of them could be themselves fully. They didn't feel pressured to fit into a certain role or to constantly reassure each other of their commitment. Each of them was simply happy to see the other happy. But as their relationship grew more serious, subtle shifts began to happen. Jack started to feel insecure, worried that Mia might meet someone else or that he might not be enough for her. He began to ask her to spend less time with her friends, subtly nudging her to text him back faster, to share her location with him more often. These weren't drastic demands, and Mia, loving Jack, didn't think much of it at first. But slowly, Jack's small insecurities began to weave themselves into the fabric of their relationship. What was once free and easy became laced with subtle tension, an undercurrent of unspoken rules. For Mia, the shift was unsettling, but she didn't want to hurt Jack. She began adjusting her behavior to meet his unspoken needs, spending less time with her friends and more time with him. Jack, in turn, felt a sense of relief. He thought, this is what love is, sacrificing for each other. But in reality, this wasn't love in its pure form. It was attachment beginning to cast its shadow. Over time, Mia started feeling confined. She missed her old self, the version of her who felt carefree, unpressured. Jack, too, began to notice that his happiness was too tied to Mia's presence. Her responses and her actions, what he had first thought of as love, had started to feel more like an obligation. He began to resent Mia for the very sacrifices he had asked of her, feeling an inner conflict because he knew deep down that it wasn't fair to her. In Buddhist teachings, attachment is often associated with suffering because it's rooted in the desire to possess or control. The very act of clinging to something or someone means we're afraid of losing them, and that fear creates tension. Imagine holding onto a handful of sand. If you hold it loosely, the sand rests in your hand without trouble. But if you try to grip it tightly, it starts to slip through your fingers. Jack's attempts to hold on to Mia tightly had begun to strain their relationship. The love they once shared was starting to feel like something to manage, to keep up with. The more he tried to secure Mia's love, the more he felt the threat of it slipping away. One evening, Mia gently confronted Jack. She shared her feelings with honesty, telling him that while she loved him deeply, she needed the freedom to be herself, to live fully without feeling the weight of his expectations. It was a difficult conversation, filled with vulnerability and tension, but it was also a turning point. Jack listened, and for the first time, he understood that his love had become mixed with attachment. He saw how his own insecurities had driven him to ask Mia to be something she wasn't, and how, in his attempt to hold onto her, he had been pushing her away. This conversation marked the beginning of a shift in their relationship. Jack started to work on his own fears, to find security and self-worth within himself rather than seeking it from Mia. He learned to trust her, to allow her the space to live her life freely. And with that shift, Mia felt safe again to love him without feeling constrained. Their love began to flow naturally once more, returning to the way it was at the beginning, free and mutual, unburdened by the weight of need and expectation. In many ways, Mia and Jack's story is one we can all relate to, because attachment in love is so common. When we love someone, we want them close. We want to share our lives deeply with them. But there's a fine line between closeness and clinging. When our love is intertwined with our need for reassurance, control, or fulfillment, it's easy for attachment to creep in. The irony, as Mia and Jack discovered, is that attachment often leads to the very things we fear: distance, resentment, and dissatisfaction. To cultivate a love that is free, we have to first find a sense of wholeness within ourselves. This doesn't mean we can't be deeply connected to others, but it means that we approach that connection with a sense of balance. In Buddhist philosophy, this kind of love is often described as a detached love, not in the sense of being uncaring, but in the sense of not holding on too tightly. Detached love allows the other person to be who they are, without needing to change them to suit our needs. It's a love that sees the other person as an individual on their own journey, not as someone who exists solely to fulfill us. In our own lives, practicing this kind of love might mean examining our inner landscape, asking ourselves why we feel the need to hold on so tightly. Are we afraid of being alone? Are we seeking validation through our partner's presence? Or are we trying to fill a void within ourselves? The answers to these questions often reveal more about our relationship with ourselves than with the other person. As Jack learned, by addressing his own insecurities, he was able to let go of his need to control Mia, allowing their relationship to grow without the weight of attachment. In the end, the shift from attachment to love is a journey of self-discovery. It asks us to look within, to find our own sense of peace and fulfillment, and then to bring that wholeness into our relationships. When we love in this way, we offer a love that is truly selfless, a love that doesn't seek to possess or control, but simply wants the best for the other person. The beauty of this kind of love is that it's not just freeing for the one we love, it's deeply liberating for us as well. When we release the need to hold on tightly, we find that love can be a source of joy rather than stress, a source of peace rather than conflict. And just like Mia and Jack, we can experience the beauty of a relationship that's based not on attachment, but on a genuine, liberated love that honors each person's freedom and individuality. Let's delve into how attachment forms and why it can lead to painful consequences in our relationships. When we're in love, it's natural to feel close to someone, to want to share our lives, and to hope that this connection lasts. But attachment often slips into the picture subtly, almost invisibly, and can shift the dynamics of a relationship from healthy love to possessive control. Attachment often forms when we place too much importance on another person for our own sense of happiness or self-worth. It begins when we look at someone we care about and think, "This person completes me." On the surface, it sounds romantic. We're told in movies, songs, and stories that finding someone who makes us feel whole is the ultimate goal. But what happens when we start believing that this person is essential to our happiness? When we rely on someone else for our emotional stability, attachment starts to take root, and with it comes the fear of losing that person. Let me tell you about Anna and Mark, a couple who seemed like they had it all together. Anna was outgoing, adventurous, and loved to travel. Mark, on the other hand, was more grounded and practical. They complemented each other well, and their relationship felt effortless. But as time passed, Anna noticed subtle changes in Mark. He started to ask questions about her plans, where she was going, who she was spending time with. First, she found it sweet he seemed to care, but soon, his questions turned into requests, and his requests into demands. Mark's insecurities started to show, though not in a way that he recognized as insecurity. He just thought he was being protective. He began to feel that Anna's happiness and freedom were somehow a threat to their relationship. In his mind, she should want to spend more time with him, to include him in every plan. Anna, however, valued her independence, and the more Mark tried to control her actions, the more she felt suffocated. What Mark was experiencing is something we can all relate to: the fear of loss. Humans, by nature, have a deep-seated fear of being left alone or losing what they hold dear. This fear often stems from insecurity, an insecurity that says, "If I don't hold on tightly enough, I might lose this person." In reality, though, the tighter we hold on, the more likely we are to push the other person away. One of the main reasons attachment grows is due to unrealistic expectations. In relationships, it's easy to fall into the belief that our partner is responsible for our happiness. We look to them to fulfill our needs, to validate our emotions, and to provide a sense of security. But here's the tricky part. No one person can meet all of our needs, and expecting them to do so places a heavy burden on the relationship. For Mark, his need for security meant wanting Anna to change who she was. He began to create invisible boundaries, dictating who she could see, where she could go, and how she should spend her time. In his mind, he justified this by saying it was for the health of the relationship. But really, it was his own insecurity speaking, his own fear whispering, "If I don't control this, I might lose her." The problem with control is that it often backfires. Instead of bringing people closer, creates distance. Anna started to pull away, feeling less and less like herself. She missed her freedom, her sense of independence, and the person she was before. Mark's insecurities started to take over. The joy that once defined their relationship was replaced with tension, and the lightness of their early days turned into a kind of heaviness neither of them could shake. In Buddhism, this behavior is seen as a kind of suffering because it's rooted in a misunderstanding of the nature of relationships. Buddha taught that attachment is one of the root causes of suffering, not because relationships are bad, but because the desire to control and possess creates inner turmoil. When we try to control another person, we're not really loving them, we're simply trying to protect our own fears. And in doing so, we begin to lose the very thing we were trying to hold on to. As Anna and Mark's story unfolds, the negative consequences of attachment become clear. Mark's attempts to keep Anna close actually drove her away. She began to feel like she was losing herself in the relationship, which ironically made her want to spend even less time with him. His need for reassurance became exhausting, and she found herself retreating, looking for spaces where she could just be without feeling monitored or controlled. This is the painful paradox of attachment. The more we try to cling to someone, the more likely we are to lose them. When our need for control starts driving our actions, we create a barrier between us and our partner. The love that was once free and effortless becomes conditional, wrapped up in expectations and demands. And when love becomes conditional, it loses its authenticity. Mark eventually noticed the change in Anna. She was more distant, less interested in spending time together, and seemed almost resentful of the time they did share. This wasn't the loving, vibrant woman he had fallen in love with. He felt hurt, angry, and confused. He began to blame Anna, thinking she was pulling away unfairly. But deep down, he knew that his behavior was part of the reason things had changed. This moment of realization can be deeply uncomfortable but is also incredibly important. Recognizing how our own insecurities and fears affect our relationships is the first step toward breaking the cycle of attachment. Mark started to see that his need to control Anna was really about his own fear of being alone, of not being good enough. He understood that by trying to hold on to Anna so tightly, he was actually holding her back from being herself. For Mark, understanding this was a turning point. He began to work on his own self-worth, realizing that his happiness couldn't depend solely on Anna or any other person. He started to explore his fears, looking at where they came from and how he could address them without projecting them onto the people he loved. This process is not easy. It requires us to look at ourselves honestly, to confront our insecurities, and to acknowledge that the control we seek is often a mask for our own fears. But in letting go of the need to control, we open the door to a healthier, more genuine love, a love that respects the other person's autonomy and doesn't seek to define them. When Mark released his need to control Anna, their relationship changed dramatically. He no longer asked her to prove her love by meeting his every expectation. Instead, he encouraged her to pursue her passions, to spend time with friends, and to enjoy the freedom that had first drawn him to her. And in giving her that freedom, he found that their connection deepened. The love that had once felt forced and heavy began to feel natural and unburdened. Attachment not only affects the other person but takes a toll on us as well. When we rely on someone else to meet all of our emotional needs, we're constantly at the mercy of their actions. Our mood depends on how they treat us, how much attention they give, and whether they live up to our expectations. This creates a roller coaster of emotions, leaving us vulnerable to disappointment, anxiety, and even resentment. Letting go of attachment doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we love with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. We allow the other person to be themselves, to make their own choices, and to grow in their own way. When we love in this way, we experience a love that is free, unforced, and, paradoxically, even stronger. For many of us, the journey from attachment to genuine love is one of learning to fill our own emotional cup. When we feel secure within ourselves, we don't need to cling to someone else for validation. We can enjoy their presence without fearing their absence. We can appreciate their uniqueness without feeling threatened by it. In the end, Mark and Anna's story teaches us that love can't thrive under the weight of attachment. It reminds us that when we let go of the need to control and trust in the strength of our bond, we allow love to flourish naturally. Love, when it is free from the chains of attachment, becomes a source of joy, comfort, and growth. It's not about filling a void within ourselves but about sharing the fullness of who we are. As Mark learned, breaking free from attachment requires courage, self-reflection, and patience. But the reward is worth it. A relationship that brings out the best in both people. A love that nurtures rather than restricts. And a connection that feels as light as it is deep. Mark and Anna's journey may be fictional, but the lessons are universal. Each of us has the potential to move beyond attachment, to cultivate a love that is grounded in respect and freedom. When we love without needing to possess, we open ourselves to a relationship that enriches both our lives and the lives of those we care about. to truly grasp the essence of loving without attachment, we need to turn to three fundamental teachings in Buddhism: impermanence, anicca; suffering, dukkha; and non self anatta. These concepts aren't just abstract philosophies but practical perspectives that can deeply influence how we view love and relationships. Let's start with impermanence. In Buddhism, impermanence is the idea that nothing in life is fixed, lasting, or unchanging. Everything is in a constant state of flux. From the seasons to our own emotions, the nature of life is change. Relationships, too, are bound by this truth. They are dynamic, ever-evolving, and influenced by countless factors beyond our control. Imagine Sarah, who had been with her partner, Alex, for nearly a decade. They'd met in college, built a life together, and shared countless moments of joy and hardship. To Sarah, Alex felt like her home, her forever. She believed that their love would remain untouched, that they would grow old together without any real disruption. But over time, Alex began to change. His interests shifted, his values evolved, and he started craving different experiences. Sarah found herself clinging to the version of Alex she had known, desperate to hold on to what they once had. In her heart, Sarah resisted the idea that Alex or their relationship could change. She fought against this evolution, convinced that true love should be immune to the forces of time. But her attachment to the past Alex, to the idea of their forever, created suffering. She felt as if she were losing him, even though he was still there. This is the trap of resisting impermanence. The more we try to cling to an unchanging vision of someone, the more we feel the pain when things inevitably shift. One day, Sarah came across a passage in a book on Buddhist philosophy that explained, "All things are impermanent." This idea hit her hard, but it also freed her in a way she hadn't expected. She realized that part of loving Alex was allowing him the freedom to grow, even if that growth led him somewhere new. It didn't mean their relationship was over. It simply meant that she needed to adjust her expectations and accept that relationships are a journey, not a destination. By embracing impermanence, Sarah found a new way to love Alex. Instead of clinging to a past version of him, she learned to appreciate who he was in the present moment. She cherished each day they spent together, knowing that it was a gift, not a guarantee. This shift allowed her to release her grip on the idea of forever and to truly see Alex as he was, here and now. It wasn't about resigning herself to loss. It was about honoring the natural flow of life. In Buddhism, suffering, or dukkha, isn't just about physical pain or heartbreak. It's a broader concept that includes any dissatisfaction, unease, or sense of incompleteness. Suffering often arises when we resist reality, when we hold onto rigid expectations that conflict with the world as it is. In relationships, suffering can show up as disappointment, resentment, or frustration, emotions that often stem from wanting our partner to fulfill all our needs or to stay exactly the same. Let's turn to Michael and Lisa, who were high school sweethearts. Michael grew up with a tough childhood, and Lisa became his rock, his safe space. He looked to her not only for love but also for validation, security, and comfort. She was everything to him. Over the years, though, Lisa began to feel the weight of Michael's reliance on her. She felt suffocated, like she had to live up to an impossible role, the sole source of Michael's happiness. For Michael, Lisa's presence was the answer to his suffering, or so he thought. But as time passed, the cracks began to show. Michael's constant need for reassurance and attention became a strain on Lisa. She loved him deeply, but she couldn't meet all his needs. No one could. Eventually, Lisa sat down with Michael and shared her feelings. She told him, "I love you, but I can't be your everything. I can't fill every empty space within you." For Michael, this was a painful realization, but it was also necessary. Through reflection, he came to understand that his suffering wasn't due to Lisa's actions, but his own unfulfilled inner needs. He had been looking outside himself, hoping Lisa would heal his wounds. The truth, however, was that he had to find a way to address his own insecurities, his own suffering. He had to stop looking to Lisa as a solution to his pain. In the context of Buddhist teachings, dukkha invites us to confront the ways we project our desires and fears onto others, creating an unrealistic burden for them to carry. Michael's story reminds us that in relationships, each person must take responsibility for their own well-being. When we rely solely on another person to complete us or to fix us, we're setting ourselves and the relationship up for disappointment.
The concept of non-self,
or anatta, is one of the most challenging Buddhist teachings to grasp, but it holds powerful lessons for relationships. Non-self suggests that there is no fixed, unchanging self within us. We are constantly shaped by our experiences, interactions, and inner reflections. In relationships, embracing non-self means understanding that neither we nor our partner is static. We're not defined by our roles or expectations. Consider Rachel and Tom, who had been married for 15 years. They both had clear ideas of who they were in the relationship. Tom was the steady provider, the grounded partner, while Rachel was the spontaneous, free-spirited one. But as they grew older, both began to feel constrained by these roles. Rachel wanted to explore a new career path that required more stability and commitment, while Tom started pursuing creative hobbies that gave him a sense of freedom he'd never experienced. Initially, they resisted these changes, feeling as though they were betraying the identities they had built together. But slowly, they began to realize that holding on to fixed identities, expecting each other to remain the same, was limiting. Tom wasn't just the steady one, and Rachel wasn't just the free spirit. They were both multifaceted individuals capable of growth and change. In embracing non-self, Rachel and Tom found a deeper freedom in their marriage. They allowed each other to evolve, to explore new parts of themselves, without feeling threatened by those changes. This acceptance created a relationship that wasn't just a set of roles but a partnership that honored the fluidity of identity. Loving each other in this way, without rigid labels or roles, gave them the space to support each other's journeys without clinging to who they had been in the past. When we incorporate impermanence, suffering, and non-self into our relationships, we begin to lower our unrealistic expectations, allowing love to flow more freely. Accepting impermanence reminds us to cherish the present moment and to release the idea of forever. Acknowledging suffering teaches us not to place the burden of our happiness on another person. Embracing non-self encourages us to let go of fixed identities and to honor the evolving nature of our partners. Let's go back to Sarah, who learned to love Alex in the present, without clinging to her idea of forever. Let's look at Michael, who started working on his own insecurities instead of expecting Lisa to fill his every need. And let's remember Rachel and Tom, who discovered that true love means allowing each other to grow beyond the roles they initially played. Each of these stories highlights how these Buddhist teachings can guide us toward a love that is more compassionate, flexible,
and sustainable.
When we accept that our loved ones are not ours to control or define, we create a space for a relationship that respects both freedom and connection. It's a love that can withstand change, a love that doesn't shatter in the face of difficulty, and a love that grows deeper through understanding. The beauty of these teachings lies in the peace they bring. By accepting impermanence, we stop fearing change and instead learn to embrace it as part of the journey. By acknowledging suffering, we recognize that while relationships bring joy, they can't shield us from life's hardships, and that's okay. And by embracing non-self, we see our partners not as extensions of ourselves but as individuals on their own unique paths. This is a love that isn't rooted in attachment or possessiveness. It's a love that is content with the moment, that celebrates the freedom to grow, and that cherishes the connection without demanding permanence. In the end, these teachings invite us to experience a kind of love that is liberating, not confining, a love that doesn't hold onto illusions but cherishes reality as it is. The practice of loving with these truths in mind is not always easy, but it is profoundly rewarding. It asks us to trust, to let go of our need for control, and to honor each moment as a gift. Through these teachings, we can discover a love that not only endures but thrives, rooted in the understanding that true love is not about holding on. It's about letting go and appreciating each moment we're given. Now that we've explored the philosophical underpinnings of impermanence, suffering,
and non-self,
it's time to ground these ideas in practical steps we can apply to everyday life. The beauty of Buddhist teachings on love lies in their emphasis on compassion and freedom. This perspective encourages us to love someone not because of what they give us, but because of who they are, regardless of whether they're in our lives forever or for just a moment. True love isn't about possessing or claiming. Instead, it's about genuinely wishing for the happiness of the other person. We often hear that love means wanting the best for someone, but it's easier said than done. When attachment sneaks in, we start expecting that their happiness will involve us, that their joy, growth, and every milestone should somehow include us. But genuine love transcends these expectations. It finds joy in the other person's happiness, regardless of whether we remain a central part of their journey. Take the story of David, a man who was deeply in love with his partner, Emma. They were together for many years, sharing life's ups and downs.
David adored Emma,
and their bond was strong. However, over time, Emma's life began to move in a different direction. She wanted to take on new challenges, travel the world, and explore paths that didn't necessarily involve David in the same way. At first, David struggled with this. He felt betrayed, fearing that their relationship was becoming less important to her. But instead of clinging, David began practicing a new kind of love, a love without attachment. Every time he felt the sting of fear or jealousy, he reminded himself that his love for Emma was about her happiness, not his need to be included in every aspect of her life. This wasn't easy. It took mindfulness, patience, and constant self-reflection. Yet, in allowing Emma to pursue her dreams, David found a new kind of joy in their relationship. He learned to appreciate her growth without fearing it. Letting go of attachment requires more than just understanding impermanence or non-self. It requires practice. Here are some practical steps inspired by David's journey that you can use to manage attachment and cultivate compassion and freedom in your relationships. Mindfulness meditation is one of the most powerful tools for managing attachment. By setting aside a few minutes each day to sit in stillness, we can become more aware of our thoughts, feelings, and reactions. Mindfulness teaches us to observe without judgment, which is crucial when we feel the pull of attachment. When you meditate, try focusing on the sensations of your breath. Each time your mind wanders to thoughts about a loved one, whether it's worry, longing, or fear, gently bring your focus back to your breath. With time, this practice trains the mind to become less reactive. When we stop reacting to every thought, we create space to respond with intention. We begin to notice, I'm feeling jealous because I want them close. Without acting out of that feeling, David made mindfulness meditation a part of his daily routine, and he began noticing patterns in his thoughts about Emma. He saw that many of his fears were rooted in past experiences or assumptions. Instead of getting swept away, he could simply observe, acknowledge, and let those feelings go. Another effective way to manage attachment is to reflect on impermanence. Even in small moments, when we remember that everything is constantly changing, we start to appreciate things as they are instead of trying to hold on to them. Consider setting aside a moment each day to reflect on impermanence. This doesn't have to be a grand meditation session. It could be as simple as appreciating the morning light streaming through your window or noticing how the seasons change. Acknowledge that these moments, like everything else in life, are temporary. For David, this practice was transformative. He began appreciating each moment with Emma without needing to secure or preserve it. By recognizing that every shared experience was a gift, he could let go of the fear of losing her. This shift brought a deep sense of peace to his relationship, as he was able to live in the present instead of constantly worrying about the future. One simple but powerful exercise is to keep a journal dedicated to appreciating your loved one's happiness. Each day, write down something that brings them joy, even if it has nothing to do with you. This practice helps redirect your focus from needing to be the source of their happiness to simply being happy for them. For example, David started a gratitude journal about Emma. He noted things like, "Emma had an amazing day at work," or "She's feeling fulfilled by her travels." At first, it felt strange to celebrate moments where he wasn't directly involved. But over time, he found that this practice helped him cultivate a sincere joy for her happiness, reducing his need to cling or control. Often, attachment comes from a place of insecurity. We worry that without the other person's constant presence or reassurance, we are somehow less. To counter this, self-compassion can be a powerful practice. Start by speaking to yourself kindly, especially in moments of self-doubt or fear. Remind yourself that you are whole, valuable, and complete as you are, without needing another person to fulfill you. For David, self-compassion became a daily mantra. When he felt insecure about Emma's changing interests, he reminded himself, "I am enough." This affirmation didn't mean he loved Emma any less. It simply meant he stopped looking to her to complete him. By cultivating his own sense of self-worth, he was able to let Emma be who she needed to be, free from the weight of his insecurities. Grace and Ben had been together for years, and their relationship was deeply meaningful. They shared dreams, supported each other's goals, and found comfort in each other's presence. However, as they grew older, Ben developed a passion for long-term travel, a calling that didn't align with Grace's desire to stay rooted in one place. At first, this difference created a rift. Grace feared losing Ben, imagining that his absence would mean the end of their relationship. But one day, a friend introduced Grace to mindfulness and the concept of loving without attachment. Intrigued, Grace decided to give it a try. She began practicing mindfulness meditation and reflecting on impermanence. Slowly, she came to understand that if she truly loved Ben, she had to support his need for adventure. With that realization, she told Ben that she would support him on his journey, even if it meant being apart. She assured him that she wanted him to be happy, even if that happiness sometimes meant being far from her. Ben was moved by Grace's gesture. Knowing that she loved him enough to let him go made him appreciate her even more. Their love deepened because it was based on mutual respect and freedom, not possession. Grace found that rather than clinging to Ben, she could cherish the time they had together and let him follow his dreams without resentment. To cultivate a love that's rooted in compassion and freedom, we need to practice daily habits that align with these values. Here are some ways to integrate these practices into your life. Set healthy boundaries. Loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. By setting boundaries, you honor both your needs and theirs. Boundaries help prevent attachment by reminding us that each person has their own path. Reframe jealousy as inspiration. When jealousy arises, try reframing it as a reminder of the uniqueness of your loved one. Use it as an opportunity to celebrate their individuality, rather than feeling threatened by it. Embrace time apart. Allowing space in a relationship can strengthen your connection. Time apart provides perspective, helps you grow individually, and allows both partners to bring fresh experiences back to the relationship. Mindful listening. When you're with your loved one, practice truly being present. Listen without interrupting, without planning your response, and without letting your mind wander. Mindful listening cultivates empathy and reminds us to appreciate the present. Celebrate small moments. Often, attachment is fueled by focusing on big milestones, anniversaries, life goals, future plans. Instead, celebrate small, everyday moments. Appreciating simple joys reduces the need for attachment and cultivates gratitude for what is. When we practice loving with compassion and freedom, we cultivate a relationship that is resilient, joyful, and deeply connected. This kind of love isn't weakened by time apart or personal growth. It is strengthened by these experiences. By letting go of attachment, we allow love to flow naturally, unburdened by expectations or fears. In David and Emma's journey, we see how love can transcend personal insecurities when practiced mindfully. Grace and Ben's story reminds us that supporting each other's growth can bring people closer, even when paths diverge. These are stories of love that doesn't cling or demand. It's a love that respects, cherishes, and celebrates the individuality of both people. Through mindfulness, reflection, and gratitude, we can let go of attachment and embrace a love that feels light, open, and boundless. This is the essence of true love, to wish for the happiness of another, regardless of where life takes them or us. It is a love that brings peace rather than pain, freedom rather than fear, and joy in the simplest moments. By letting go, we create a love that is powerful, resilient, and, above all, compassionate. As we wrap up this journey into the wisdom of non-attached love, let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've explored together. We've walked through the roots of attachment, understanding how it can sneak into our relationships in subtle ways, turning love, which should feel light and expansive, into something that feels heavy, even suffocating. We've seen how the teachings of impermanence, suffering, and non-self remind us that true love is about freedom, not control, about connection, not possession. When we love without attachment, we open ourselves to a way of being in relationships that brings genuine peace. Imagine a love where you feel completely at ease, where you are free to be yourself without worrying about how the other person might react. In that kind of love, there is no pressure to prove yourself or to meet every expectation. You're not constantly grasping or fearing that the person you love will change or drift away. Instead, you're grounded in the present, grateful for each moment you share, accepting each change as part of life's natural rhythm. This is the heart of non-attached love. It's not about removing yourself emotionally or detaching in a cold way. It's about loving someone deeply, while giving them the freedom to be who they are. And in return, you find a freedom in yourself that allows you to let go of insecurities, doubts, and fears. When we let go of attachment, we are essentially saying, I trust you, I trust this moment, I trust myself. It's a powerful affirmation of both love and self-worth, an acknowledgement that we are whole as we are and that we don't need another person to complete us. Non-attached love doesn't mean we stop caring. In fact, it often makes our love stronger because it's rooted in a genuine desire for the other person's happiness, without needing to control how that happiness looks. We no longer cling to the idea of them as ours or rely on them to make us feel whole. Instead, we appreciate who they are and celebrate their presence in our lives. The irony is that by loving this way, we often create a stronger, more resilient bond than if we were to hold on tightly. Now, I know that letting go of attachment isn't always easy. It takes practice, patience, and sometimes it means looking inward at our own insecurities and fears. But the beauty of non-attached love is that every small step we take toward letting go brings us closer to peace. The more we practice, the lighter we feel, and the more joy we find in the moments we share with others. Next time you feel the pang of attachment, that urge to cling or control, take a deep breath and remember that the greatest love is one that sets both of you free. It's in that freedom that love can truly grow, unburdened by expectations and fears. And as you release those small attachments, whether it's the need to know every detail of someone's life, to seek constant reassurance, or to feel validated by another, you'll discover a love that's boundless, accepting, and deeply peaceful. So, as you move forward, embrace the wisdom of non-attached love. Trust that by giving others the space to be themselves, you're also giving yourself the space to grow and find happiness. Let your love be a source of strength and compassion, not something that restricts or controls. This is the love that liberates, the love that heals, and the love that brings true contentment. Thank you for joining me on this journey here on the Tranquil Mind. May you find the courage to let go, the grace to love freely, and the wisdom to cherish each moment with those you love. Until next time, remember, the greatest love is the one that sets both of you free.